Hello and welcome to my new video related to Bitcoin education. In this video, we'll discuss about the history of digital money. I think a very interesting video. Let's start with the disclaimer. So this presentation is for educational purpose only, and it is not a financial advice. The reference article is the article called Bitcoin is an idea. The author is Gigi, and I strongly recommend to read the article. First reason why to read the article because it has one of the best introduction that I have ever read in in an article related to Bitcoin. That's why I put the whole introduction in the presentation and let's read together it. On October 31st, 2008, the future trajectory of our global society was forever changed. A breakthrough was made, and an unstoppable idea was let loose on the world. An idea so profound, so outrageous, that it was ignored by almost everyone for the first couple of years, and it is still dismissed by most. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. The white paper released by Satoshi Nakamoto on this Halloween night describes an idea that will inevitably take the world by storm. While the most still think of Bitcoin as a nothing more than a get-rich-quick scheme, unfortunately, I will add, completely missing the profound change it will continue to have on society, it becomes more obvious every day that it will not go away. In fact, ideas, unlike solid structures, do not perish. Alan Moore reminds us. They remain immortal, immaterial, and everywhere, like all divine things. On these fateful nights in 2008, Satoshi let the genie out of the bottle. We went from a world where digital cash was just an idea to a world where Bitcoin exists. Not only is the idea here to stay, but with every passing block, Bitcoin reminds us that this idea is now a reality. As we shall see, this new reality is more powerful than one might think at first. It is powerful because it will usher in a new economic paradigm. It is powerful because the time is ripe for it. And it is powerful because it can't be stopped. As Victor Hugo reminds us, nothing is as powerful as an idea whose time has come. Bitcoin is here to stay, and Bitcoin's time is now. For me, it's really impressing this introduction. I always say, also said in other videos, if a difference between a person who has medium good knowledge of Bitcoin, a person who really understood Bitcoin, who has very good knowledge of Bitcoin, is how they talk about Bitcoin. A person who has a medium good knowledge, he start to discuss about digital property, digital gold, and normal store of value. For sure, for people who understood Bitcoin, these are also important, but they talk mostly in philosophical way, changing the world. Bitcoin time is now. It will take the world by storm, or a technological and financial leap forward for humanity. They talk about humanity, civilization, flourishing, new renaissance. This is what the people who understood Bitcoin are talking about. So let's start with an idea whose time has come. Let's start to discuss about the article. In fact, contrary to popular belief, Bitcoin didn't come out of nowhere, and this is what many people are thinking that it's coming out of nowhere, and that's why they don't trust it. The idea of digital cash has a long and rich history. Most notably, a loose collective known as the cyberpunks wrote at length about digital anonymous cash, how such system might be realized, and the societal implication of strong cryptography in general. Hence the name cyberpunks. The cyberpunks cared a great deal about the idea of digital cash. In fact, in 1993, Eric Hughes discussed the idea of digital cash in relation to privacy and its importance for a free society in a cyberpunk manifesto. It was very famous in the cyberpunk world. He wrote, since we desire privacy, we must ensure that each party to a transaction have knowledge only of that which is directly necessary for that transaction. Since any information can be spoken of, we must ensure that we reveal as little as possible. In most cases, personal identity is not salient. When I purchase a magazine at a store and hand cash to the clerk, there is no need to know who I am. In fact, the cyberpunks, they focused mainly on the privacy aspect of digital cash. It was mostly the privacy. Monetary economic aspects were secondary. They realized that privacy is absolutely paramount for a free and open society. And this is also the secondary of the monetary aspect. This is why also in the Bitcoin world there are conflicts. There are mostly the people, many people who are coming from the cyberpunk um, idea and the group, and they are focusing on Bitcoin should be censorship resistant. They say take off keys your Bitcoin from exchange. It is important the privacy. While for the monetary, then there is also another group coming from the Austrian Economic School of Economics, and they are saying Bitcoin is the best form of money because it's scarce and it has all the inherent property. And for sure, it's also important the privacy, but it's not as important as for the cyberpunks. While Bitcoin is a breakthrough in many ways, all the technical parts that make it work did exist already. Public key cryptography, peer-to-peer networks, digital signatures, cryptographic as function, cryptographic timestamp, hash change, proof of work. Everything existed before. Satoshi did not invent any clever new algorithm or cryptographic primitive. Instead, he found a way to combine existing technology in an ingenious way, using economic incentives and game theory to bootstrap and secure the system. We will see now how he did. In fact, Bitcoin's prehistory is as long as it is fascinating. Satoshi was able to build upon various technology and protocols, some of which go back 50 years and more. While 50 years may be a long time in technology, the art of cryptography is way more ancient than that, dating back as far as 1900 BC, so 1900 before Christ. It is hard to say what the most important building blocks were, but the most fundamental ones are probably digital signature in 1976 and public key cryptography in 1978. So they have more than 40 years of history. Without these ideas, Bitcoin couldn't exist. And here you can see a list of discover or invention that led to Bitcoin. Various digital cash systems have been developed before Bitcoin. All of them failed eventually, and all for similar reason. The following in fact, are particularly interesting in the context of Bitcoin. The article individuated six. So eCash from David Chow, eGold from Douglas Jackson, Hashcash by Adam Beck, BitGold by Nick Szabo, bMoney by Wei Dai, RPOW, Reusable Proof of Work by Hal Finney. Let's start with eCash. eCash utilizes digital signature to prove ownership, an idea that is still used in Bitcoin today. Proposed by David Chaum in 1992, it was later implemented by his company and operational for 3 years before the firm went bankrupt in 1998. Chaum is still active as a cryptographer. He pioneered many cryptography techniques and pushed the development of privacy-preserving technology forward. One of the privacy enhancing transaction techniques in Bitcoin, the Chauman CoinJoin, is named in his honor. While eCash was cryptographically and technologically interesting because it was a new try, it wasn't a monetary innovation, and he ultimately failed because it was operated by a central entity, DigiCash Inc., and the company failed by Chaum. So it failed because it was operated by a central entity. This is a topic that we will also see in other examples. Let's move to the next one, eGold, 1996. So 14 years after the previous one. eGold after eCash. eGold was particularly groundbreaking cryptographically. So the other was more cryptographically, but eGold it was not so groundbreaking cryptographically. But it was one of the first digital currency that gained traction. Although others existed before it, eGold is considered to be the first successful digital currency that became popular enough to have some merchant adoption. At its height, in fact, eGold had 5 million users, so many 5 million users, and processed value transferred in the order of 2 billions. Besides the e-gold tokens, there were e-gold tokens backed by gold. Other precious e-metal could be acquired, e-silver, e-platinum, and e-palladium. And the demise of eCash, again, was that it was a centralized service run by a company, Gold and Silver Reserve Inc. The US government filed a lawsuit claiming that the company was running an unlicensed money transmitting business. In the end, the eCash project failed because it was operated by a company that could be shut down. Again, central company. Let's go to the third one, Hashcash by Adam Back in 1997. Originally proposed in 1997 and more formally published as Hashcash, a denials of service countermeasure in 2022, Hashcash is one of the essential ideas that made Bitcoin possible. In fact, while other researchers had the idea of pricing via processing before Adam Beck, his paper was referenced by Satoshi in the Bitcoin white paper and led to what is known as Bitcoin proof of work today. As far as I can tell, the term proof of work was first introduced in the Hashcash paper, say the author. In essence, Hashcash utilized the fact that computation cycles cost time and the real world resources. This is the first time that this concept is used and created. Beck proposed that introducing the electronic equivalent of a postage stamp via Hashcash could be its main use case. The idea computing a hash can be done without flipping bits, which in turn can be done without expending time and energy. So as you know in Bitcoin, in the proof of work, it means the proof that you did the work. In order to find the solution, you need to guess many times. You need to spend energy. You need to spend time. And Hashcash exploits the peculiar property of our universe that any computation, or for example, any change of a system requires energy. In other words, you cannot cheat physics. Computation will never be free because to have more computation, you need more energy. You have to spend more resources or spend more time. Let's move. That was Hashcash by Adam Beck. And let's move to BitGold by Nick Szabo in 1998. And BitGold can be described as a direct predecessor to Bitcoin. The other three, Satoshi used some of the part, but BitGold can be described as the first direct predecessor of Bitcoin. In fact, while the system was never implemented, the way Szabo envisioned it to work in theory is remarkably close to the way Bitcoin works in actuality. The purpose of BitGold, as the name implies, was to create a digital monetary good independent from any central authority, which in turn can be used as a store of value, just like gold in the physical world. So similar to the idea of Satoshi. In fact, Szabo writes, the objective, which I argued for vigorously, was to create a long-term store of value independent from any central authority, yet far more secure than traditional gold. In fact, one point that Szabo makes repeatedly is that physical gold has various problems and it is quite unsecure when compared to solutions rooted in cryptography. Storage, for example, is only as secure as the door and walls that protect it, and in the end, someone can always break it and take it. It was never implemented, but it remained a theoretical proposal of how a monetary protocol could work. In fact, the intended also, furthermore, the intended purpose of Bitcoin isn't only the only thing that will be familiar to Bitcoiners today. The way the system was supposed to work will be familiar as well. In fact, granted, there are some crucial differences, but the basic idea is very similar. There are two crucial differences between Zabo approach and Bitcoin, though. The first is that Bitgold requires two separate registries, while Bitcoin only one, the blockchain. And so the Zabo blockchain, the Zabo registry are two, one for recording timestamps to note when the Bitcoin gold was created, and one for recording property titles to see who is owning the Bitgold. The second difference is that Bitcoin is supposed to rely on benchmark function as opposed to one-way functions to generate proof of work, and that's a bit different from blockchain. Benchmark functions are functions proposed by Szabo that are computationally stable. For example, a set of functions that maintain a similar degree of difficulty across miners. He put considerable effort into defining and exploring this function, trying to formulate mathematical proofs that energy computation will take at least a certain amount of time, no matter what computer architecture is used. So he put a lot of time to create something that makes sure that it requires time for computer to solve a problem. However, since computers get faster all the time, he remarked that finding such a function will be difficult. To find a real perfect function is difficult because computer get fast every time. A potential big problem remains. The word infatti lacks a cryptographically stable problem. In fact, the lack of a stable benchmark function lead to a multitude of problems. Older coins created by user would have a different costingless. And, um, and then we'll also create an exacerbation leaded by inflation of money. So this Satoshi Nakamoto found then invented the difficulty adjustment that makes sure that the time remain the same. Even if the difficulty change, the energy change, and this okay, but important is the time. And this problem of this was a problem of the benchmark function because Szabo didn't find a way to make sure that money remained scarce. Let's go to the fifth one. B-Money, Weidai 1998. Like Szabo Bitgold, Weidai B-Money was never implemented. It remained a theoretical proposal of how monetary protocol could work. DAI goes on to describe a system where every participant maintains a separate database of how much money belongs to each user. Users are identified by pseudonyms, public keys. Monetary units are created in relation to computational efforts, same like Bitcoin. Money is transferred by signing message, and contracts are executed by the protocol automatically. In fact, it was describing in spirit, but not in detail, how Bitcoins operates today. He outlines also five things that are necessary for such a system to function: creation of money, transfer of money, effecting of contracts, conclusion of contracts, and the enforcement of contracts. While B-money solves many of the problems that are inherent to electronic money, the problem described by Szabo in Bitgold remains the creation of money. In fact, the dimensions in the proposal as follows. One of the more problematic parts in the B-money protocol is money creation. This part of the protocol requires that all the account keepers decide and agree on the cost of a particular computation. Unfortunately, because computing technology tend to advance rapidly and not always publicly, this information may be unavailable, inaccurate, or outdated, and all of which will cause a serious problem of the protocol. So he also recognizes the problem that computer going fast and whatever computation or hash function or effort is needed today will be much easier to solve in 1 or 2 years and even more in 5 years. So Dai proposed a solution to this problem by describing a sub-protocol that is solely responsible for money creation, so a special protocol for that. Participants would periodically agree upon much money should be created, collectively working together in a market-driven cycle that consists of four steps: planning, bidding, computation, and creation. But since B-Money was never implemented in the form proposed by DAI, it is unclear whether this elaborate money creation scheme would have worked as intended. I would say mostly no, personally, because they say when people have to agree on something, it's not anymore trust. Right? You need to trust the people, and unfortunately, they are all not only nice people who will try to create money or to gain money, so they will try to abuse of the system. So I would say very difficult that it would have worked. Let's now move to the last one of the six, RPOW, so called also reusable proof of works by Halfini in 2004. And for the record, Halfini was the second person after Satoshi Nakamoto in mining Bitcoin. In fact, a few days, Bitcoin started the 3rd of January 2009, and there is a tweet from Halfini or a post in a social network where he was saying that he was running Bitcoin and he was in January 2009. So he was the second person in mining Bitcoin. In fact, Halfini in 2004 found a way to make the proof of work tokens from Adam Beck's Hashcash reusable. In essence, a user can create reusable proof of work tokens via RPOW client software, which takes a proof of work string as generated by the Hashcash software invented by Adam Beck. RPOW will facilitate the use of proof of work tokens as a form of Bitcoin by allowing the tokens to be passed and exchanged from person to person. His implementation was a practical solution to problem inherent of proof of work tokens, namely that the proof of work tokens themselves don't make very good money. So he created these reusable that were easier to use as money. Proof of work tokens are just hashes, bits of information that can be double spent. And next to Hashcash, reusable proof of work was one of the systems that was actually implemented. However, probably because the effort required to run RPOW servers, as well as a lack of incentives to do so, so we're also missing the incentives, the game theory that Satoshi solved. FINI reusable proof of work tokens never gained traction and the project was eventually discontinued. These are the 6 examples. Which was then, let's move now to Satoshi Breakthrough. Satoshi identified multiple problems with our current monetary system and the conventional currencies that are native to it. Trust, we need to trust in third parties. Currency debasement by central banks. Every time central bank is printing money, it devaluates our currency, our savings. Credit bubbles, fractional reserve banking. Every time a bank is giving a loan, is creating money from thin air. So it's devaluating our currency. Then privacy, lack of micropayments due to overhead costs and middlemen. Satoshi didn't set out to solve one problem. He set out to solve many problems at once. Amazingly, he got so many things right from the start that he was actually able to solve most of them just in one shot. Just to resume what was possible before Bitcoin: account creation via public key cryptography, and unforgeable costly tokens via proof of work, proving ownership via digital signature, passing proof of work tokens via signature chains. All this technology was already available, and it will never be enough to say that. While for the general average person, Bitcoin is coming from nowhere. No, all this technology was already existing since 40, some even more than 40 years. Possible after Bitcoin was preventing double spending without a trusted third party, limiting supply without a trusted third party. Satoshi was putting everything together. He had the difficulty adjustment, the right incentives for the miners, and then we have the magic internet of money. Last but not least, in fact, Satoshi was standing on the shoulders of giants who have built several different technologies previous to him. He combined all of them. He had the difficulty adjustment, and the result was to have magic internet money. Also, the best form of money the humanity has ever had. And with that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you understood that before Bitcoin there were already many tentatives, and Satoshi mixed all of them in a perfect way. He had the difficulty adjustment, and now we have the best form of money. Many thanks, and see you in one of the next videos. Bye.